How does a Broadway musical get from idea to stage?
Broadway is a street in New York City, but more than that, it is the American home for a fine arts discipline that holds a very special place in my heart.
Theater is defined as a dramatic representation as an art or profession. Despite being most well known for the acting aspect of the art form, theater includes many other facets like writing, costuming, set building, and so many more. Plays and musicals both fall under the category of theater, but musicals are a much more recent development of the theater world. The roots of theater date back to ancient Greece, but in the modern day, theater is known for flashy, large presentations, especially on Broadway, which is dominated by extravagant, business-driven productions, mostly musicals. Of course, Broadway is not the only place where theater can be found, but it is the largest hub for American theater. And while this is more symbolic than anything, a musical tends to be considered to have made it in the theater world once it reaches Broadway. But the process of getting a show to Broadway is very complicated. The idea. Before a musical can do anything else, there has to be an idea. It doesn't have to be good, it just has to be a start. The idea can be a completely new, original idea, or an adaptation of a book, movie, or something else. Some examples of original musicals that have made it onto Broadway in recent years are shows like The Book of Mormon, Maybe Happy Ending, and Dear Evan Hansen. But some other famous original shows from less recent years are Bye Bye Birdie, A Chorus Line, and Anything Goes. Some musicals that are adaptations of other media are NEWSIES, which is from a movie, Wicked, which is from a book, and Cabaret, which is from a play. Once there is an idea, the writing can start. A libretto, which is the book or the non-sung parts of the musical, and the music must be written by librettists and songwriters respectively. Sometimes, especially if a show already includes well-known talent, the show will get picked up by producers at this stage. But usually the writers will have to prove their musical has merit with a workshop production. Workshop production. A workshop production is a very basic production of the show, just to give producers an idea of what the show will look like and if it's even worth funding. At this stage, everything about the show is still fluid. Casting, venue, and even the writing of the show itself are subject to change. Rent was a show with a particularly successful workshop and was quickly given an off-Broadway production and eventually reached Broadway. Even shows from outside of New York City can end up finding success on Broadway because of their workshops. Les Miserables, while not immediately successful with getting onto Broadway, had a production with the Royal Shakespeare Company that attracted Broadway producers to the show. A workshop does not guarantee that a musical will make it onto Broadway, though. The unproduced show, Superbia, had many workshops, but was never picked up by any producers. The writer, Jonathan Larson, eventually wrote Rent, but before that, his shows never made it past the workshop stage. Producing the show. Money. In the end, it all comes down to money. 2/3 of show business is the word business. Once a show picks up producers, the producers have to get the money to put on the show. Producers have to find investors to raise the multiple millions of dollars necessary to put a show on Broadway. Often, producers will hold backer auditions to find investors interested in the show. Producers hold backer auditions so that if the show does end up flopping, the wallets of the producers are left unharmed. Backer auditions are where potential investors are able to hear select highlights of the musical and learn potential casting decisions. Even older shows like Oscar and Hammerstein's Oklahoma had backer auditions. If the producers are able to raise the money, then the show can finally start moving. Finding actors. The directors of a show will often have actors in mind lined up, such as famous names or people who were in the workshop. But under the Actors' Equity Association, a show must hold open auditions so that anyone who can has a chance to try out for the show. To audition for a show on Broadway, an actor must be a member of the Actors' Equity Association. In the Equity headquarters, notices for open auditions are posted with times, places, and requirements for the role, such as age or other necessary traits. If actors leave enough impression on the casting directors, then they can re-audition at a callback. Callbacks allow the directors to see more of the actor's range, to ensure that they are, in fact, right for the role. Once the show is fully cast, the rehearsal process can start. Getting the show running. When the cast meets together for the first time, they have a read-through, which is a complete reading of the script with toned-down acting to familiarize the actors with the script. The team will get the ball rolling as quickly as possible, and within a few days of rehearsals, they will have 1 or 2 numbers already staged. Early on, the music may simply be played by a singular pianist because of the ever-changing music to accommodate for the talents of the actors. Even famous theater composers, such as George Gershwin, the namesake of the Gershwin Theater, got their starts as rehearsal pianists. After a few weeks of getting used to the script and the music, the cast and orchestra finally have a rehearsal together, and this first rehearsal with both groups is known as a sitzprobe. There will also be many technical rehearsals, where the technical aspects, such as lighting, props, and other often overlooked aspects of theater, are worked out. Then, dress rehearsals begin, and after that, the show begins to perform in front of a paying audience. Before playing in New York City, many shows have a tryout outside of the city, such as a tour or even in other cities like Boston and Baltimore. The critics in other cities are notoriously much less scathing than those in New York. This gives the writers and directors time to see how audiences and critics will react to the musical. At this point, the show is still being rewritten, revised, and rehearsed. After tryouts, a show can finally move to New York. Before opening, many shows will have Broadway previews. While technically being on Broadway, the show has not officially opened. Previews give a show one last chance for rewrites and technical changes. Most shows have previews for about 4 to 6 weeks, but infamous cases like Spider-Man: Turn Off the Dark and Carrie had incredibly long previews because of many technical issues. But finally, once previews end, the show can open and officially become a Broadway show. Conclusion. Now, reaching Broadway does not mean the end of a show's life. Far from it, actually. Some shows will have incredibly long Broadway runs, like Phantom of the Opera. Some shows will begin a tour very soon after closing, like Something Rotten. And most shows will have their licensing rights released to the public so that regional, community, and even school theaters can perform the show. And plenty of shows will have a Broadway revival many years after the original production.
What I can explain barely scratches the surface of the many, many pieces that go into the creation of a Broadway musical. It would take hours to truly show how complex it is, how many people go into it, how hard it is to make it on Broadway as an actor, a playwright, a musician, or any of the large number of jobs in a musical. Theater is so complex and can't be captured in such a short period of time. Nevertheless, I hope that I did it enough justice.